Now that we've created a working file, you essentially have two versions of the same image that we can work with. This working file is going to be our workhorse. It's the image that we will come back to over and over again to make changes, to adapt the image for different purposes, and to possibly make large prints from down the road. What I want to show you is that now that we save this as a TIFF file, that TIFF file is a non-compressing file, which means that it will save all of the information, and so we can work on this without loss. But if we minimize this and go back to Bridge, in Bridge you can find that your SD card still has that original JPEG that we created in Camera. I think it would be a good idea to move this original JPEG and all of your other JPEGs or RAW files onto your hard drive so that they're in a space for more permanent saving. The SD card, I believe, should just be used for capturing images in Camera, and then they should be moved to a hard drive or a portable hard drive for storage afterwards. I do like to keep this original file in case anything happens. If I lose a drive, I can always go back to that original file as well. Now that we have a working file, there are a couple more things that I want to do to set this up. When you were first setting up your camera, I had you choose a color space. And the color space that I recommended is Adobe RGB 1998 or Pro Photo RGB. Those two are both very large color spaces with large color gamuts that allow you to capture a wide variety of color ranges. They're beautiful for making prints. sRGB is often a default in your camera, and sRGB is a strong format for creating images that are going to be viewed on screen, but it is a smaller range, and so it doesn't provide the possibility for the full color gamut that you want when you're creating a print. Now, since we're working in Adobe RGB or Pro Photo, it's important to make sure that Photoshop is set up the same way. To set your color setting in Photoshop, you're going to scroll up here to Edit, then down to Color Settings, and here we want to make sure that our working space matches the color space in our camera. Here this is already set to Adobe RGB 1998. I believe when I opened it the first time, it was set to sRGB. So we just want to make sure that this matches the color space we're working with in Camera. The reason for that is that way our files will recognize our systems and they'll use the exact right color each time. Now that our color space is set up, we can decide what else we're going to do with this photograph. In the long term, you're going to make lots of changes to your images. In the beginning of this course, however, I want you to focus primarily on making strong image captures in Camera. I want you to think about how you're cropping your image, how you're framing your image, how you're making strong exposures that reflect the image that you want. Down the road, as we introduce more tools, we'll be able to manipulate more and interpret more of the image. For now, we're going to stick to basics. I will give you this one tool at this point, which is your crop tool, and the crop tool is here. If you hover over the crop tool, Photoshop will give you a demonstration of how it works. I'm going to go ahead and click on it because there's just one thing I want to show you. Up here in the top corner, it'll give you the ratio that it's going to crop in. I generally keep my ratio in original ratio. The reason for that is I like all of my images to have the same shape. I don't want some to be long and skinny where others are squat. I'd like them to be pretty similar so that viewing experience is uniform. Now, you may have different inclinations, and that's okay as well. But as a rule of thumb, it's nice to keep these the same. With the original ratio preserved, if I scroll this in, it's going to keep my rectangle the same shape. And I can move this around to find a cropping that I think is appropriate. I'll double click, and it'll crop the image to the size that I made it. I think that looks okay. However, I prefer the original image. So I can go back one step by hitting Command Z. That'll take me back one step. The other way to move backwards in a step is to open up your window and your history. The history will show all of the changes that you make, and you can go back, I believe, 30 steps at a time if you want. It can be a good tool to work with. Now we have two files. We have the original file we created and our working file, which is here. When we turn in a file, you don't need to turn in a file that is as large as your working file. The working file is the full-sized image in its native image size. This image is 7,952 pixels by 5,304. That's a large image. It's probably close to 24 inches if I print it at its full resolution. If I want to check to see what my max print size is I can click Image and then come down to Image Size. There are a couple things we want to know about resolution. Resolution is where we're setting the image for its output. Now this resolution is set at 350 pixels per inch. Printing resolution, ideally, is 300 pixels per inch. Anything bigger than that's okay, but you don't need it. 300 is what we want for an optimal print. Right now, there's a little binder here. You can see that my width and my height are bound together so that they keep a ratio together so that it doesn't change. My image doesn't get squat or skinnied if I change one. If I unclick resample, now all three, my width, height, and resolution are tied together. I'm going to change my resolution to 300, and my height and width just changed, keeping my same ultimate 7,952 by 5,304 that I started off with the same, but showing me the size of image that I can make. So this camera can make an image that's about 18 by 27 inches, approximately at 300 ppi, which is a good printing resolution. I'm always going to keep this original working file at its full resolution. I don't want to downsize it. However, when it's time to turn in an image for class, we don't want to turn in an image that's that large for a couple of reasons. One, it's going to take up a lot of space on the server. You're going to run out of room, and it's going to be very slow. Before you upload an image to Canvas or to a website or to another space, you want to resize it appropriately. The other thing that resizing does, if you're putting images online, is it protects your images. You want to have an image that is viewable and looks good on screen, but one that's not large enough for other people to print it without your permission. What I recommend working with for on screen is an image that's about 1,280 pixels per inch on its longest side. To redo that, what I can do is I can click Resample, change my inches here to pixels. And I'm going to make my long side on this one, since it's a horizontal image, make this 1280. That will resize my image to a reasonable space. I can hit OK. It's a much smaller image. Now if I want to zoom into this image, I can zoom into an image by holding Command and hitting the plus button, and each time I hit the plus, it'll zoom up. If I hit the Command and minus, it'll get smaller. The other way to navigate in and out of an image is with the magnifying glass down here, which will give us a plus, and as you click, it'll get bigger. If you hit the Option key, it will get smaller. Okay. I want to go back to image size one more time. Go back to image size. I want to show you that right now, my pixel size is 1280 by 854. That's a more reasonable size for online use. And when you're turning in images in class, that's all you need. You don't need anything bigger. If we unclick the resample and tie all of these together, once I put my resolution to 72 dpi, you can see that even at 72 pixels per inch, that gives me an image size that's about 11 by 17. So an 11 by 17 image will display on a very large screen in a way that looks pretty darn good. Click OK. Now that I've made a smaller version of this, I have to resave it. And this time, I want to make sure that I don't save it with the working title. I'm going to give it a new title. File, Save As. Save this to my computer again. And when you're uploading images for class, we can move them back to being JPEGs. We're just viewing them on screen, so if they degrade a little bit, that's not a big deal. This isn't something you're going to use forever. Instead of calling this Wyatt B-Day 2020 Working, I'm going to retitle it and keep the first part the same, but I'm going to change it to 1280 so that I know that my resolution is 1280. And the other way I might title this is I might title this Shallow Depth of Field, because then it would fit one of the assignments that you're working on right now with a JPEG. I'll hit Save. The JPEG will give you an option of compressing, but we're going to keep our quality at maximum 12 and hit OK. Now it changed my title up here to Wyatt B-Day 2020 1280. So I know this is the image that I would turn in or I might use on a website if I'm going to upload that image. I minimize my screen here and go back to my desktop, and let's see, there we are. We have two of the same image. We have the TIFF, which is my working big file, and the small one that I just made to show online. The idea of making multiple files like this is that the working file is the file we can always go back to and rework and make a smaller version. But we always want to retain that big file first. The smaller version, I'll probably throw away after I upload it for class or for something else or for print. And then when I need to down the road, I'll make a new version of that. That way I don't get cluttered with having multiple images all over the place. There you go.